Okay.
I'm Larry Berg, and I'm a member of Congregation B'nai Abraham in Butler. I'm a former president there, and I'm currently on the board of directors. And I've been asked to be the moderator for tonight's program. This is the final program of the Clergy Exploration Series under the auspices of the Western Pennsylvania Small Congregations Initiative. And that brings together, as you know, 13 congregations from the region. The conveners of this group are the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh and the Jewish Community Legacy Project, JCLP, and they work exclusively with small congregations from the region. The conveners of this group are the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh, and this group works with helping congregations to address the current and the future needs of these congregations. And I want to thank the spiritual leaders who presented the earlier program, some of whom are here. And this has been a wonderful series. It's significant that tonight's program coincides with the holiday of Shavuos, as you will shortly hear. But first, let me offer a few logistical details. This program is being recorded. It'll be saved on the JCLP YouTube channel. Cantor, Michal Gray-Schaffer encourages people to ask questions during the presentation, but in the essence of time, we ask those questions to be kept as brief as possible. And you can post those questions also or comments in the chat room, and we'll relay those questions to the Cantor for her response. And now it's my pleasure to make the introduction of our presenter today. Since its inception in 1906, Congregation B'nai Abraham has been here 116 years. It's been the only synagogue in Butler County. It serves the Jewish population of Butler and surrounding counties as a synagogue for worship services, and until recently, a religious school for Jewish children. Those who identify with the different streams of Judaism, conservative, Reform, Orthodox, worship with us and have for many, many years. As a social hub for the Jewish population, we offer speakers, book clubs, programs, and a number of classes. As with other small Rust Belt communities in Western Pennsylvania, our greatest growth was during World War II, when our congregation boasted 225 families. And now we have less than 25% of that number. But B'nai Abraham still has a dedicated core of congregants who keep the synagogue a vital part of our Jewish community. Since 2011, for 11 years now, we've been served by our spiritual leader, Cantor Michal Gray-Schaffer. Cantor Michal received her certification from the American Conference of Cantors and Hebrew Union College Sacred School of Music in 2009. And after an early career as a costume designer in theater, of all things, and a middle career of raising 3 children and volunteering in many organizations. Before her investiture as a cantor, she served many Pittsburgh area synagogues as a cantorial soloist. A favorite posting was serving the military and their families for 3 years for the high holidays at Fort Campbell in Kentucky. She also served as resident chaplain for the Pittsburgh Veterans Administration from 2010 to 2011. Now, after your presentation, Cantor, I know you have a secret to share for us, one that you haven't shared for me, even though I've known you all these years. So I can't wait to hear what that secret is. So I'm pleased and honored now to present Cantor Michal Gray-Schaffer.
Thank you, Larry. That was a lovely introduction. I am going to share my screen, and before I do the presentation, I thought, because it's evening and because we are still counting the Omer, I thought that we would count the Omer together. So if you know the blessing, I invite you to join me. And as I said, I'm getting over COVID. My voice isn't the greatest, but it is what it is. So, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat haomer. And then we go down to the day, which is, it's 47. Hayom Shvi'ah v'arbim yom shahim shisha shavuot v'hamisha yamim laomer. Today is 47 days, which is 6 weeks and 5 days of the Omer. And we aren't exactly studying Torah tonight, but in the Reformed tradition, we usually extend the blessing for learning to anything that is about studying Judaism, which we are tonight. So I also invite you to join me in doing the blessing for learning and studying Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of all, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with words of Torah. And I'm going to stop that share and then pull up. Somehow my presentation is hiding somewhere. So.
Do you think it's in the top? If you look at the top bar, would it be there?
Well, I know it's, forgive me. It was here before.
You think it's on your desktop?
I think it is on my desktop, so I'm looking for it.
Why don't you do this? Go to screen share and see if it'll appear when you hit screen share. It may be in one of the boxes.
It was here and now it's not here.
Is it in one of your document folders?
Yeah, let me pull up Keynote.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm always so happy when someone is better at this than I am.
Oh, you'll find it. You'll find it.
No, I have it.
Great.
So.
Don't worry, it happens all the time.
Okay. View. Actually, the spoiler is in the first slide. I thought I was going to keep this a secret until the end, but my presentation is Joining the Faith. A convert looks at Jewish proselytism from biblical times to the present. So I've divided it into 4 different periods. And the first, of course, is the biblical period. And what was conversion like then? Actually, the very first Jew was Abraham, and then Sarah and his immediate family. So pretty much other than anyone who was born into that family, the generations, also became a convert to Judaism. In the biblical era, most likely there was a gradual metamorphosis of Gentile to Jew. Most of them were seeking to marry a Jew or a Jewess. Another thing that I found very interesting is Jewish slave owners, and yes, Jews were allowed to own slaves. They, not forcefully, of course, but sometimes Jewish slave owners converted the slaves in their household. And you might be familiar with the term ger, which means stranger, or gerim, which is the plural. It's used in biblical Hebrew to, well, sometimes like Abraham was the ger among the Hittites. The Israelites were the gerim when they sojourned in Egypt for 400 years. When the Jews left Egypt, you might remember that it wasn't just Jews that left Egypt. Some strangers, some gerim, came with them. So it also referred to non-Jews amongst the Jews, and sometimes gerim refers to it was almost a legalistic term, which referred to non-Jews living amongst the Jews, let's say in Israel. And originally, according to Deuteronomy, there were those who were not allowed to enter, to convert. And they were eunuchs, Ammonites, and Moabites, although, as you will see, Ruth, our biblical Ruth, from the scroll of Ruth, which we will be reading at Shavuot, which happens on Saturday night. Ruth was a Moabite, so there are rules, and then there are rules. Edomites and Egyptians only in the 3rd generation. I have to say, for a convert, these quotes from Deuteronomy, which is the last book in the Torah, kind of send shivers down my spine. Deuteronomy 29:9. You stand this day, all of you, before the Lord your God, your tribal heads, your elders, and your officials, all the men of Israel, your children, your wives, even the stranger, Gerim, within your camp, to enter into the covenant of the Lord your God. And this is the one that gives me shivers. At 29:13, I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone, but both with those who are standing with us this day before the Lord, and with those who are not with us this day. And the rabbis postulated about this, that all the Jewish souls that ever were to be were standing at Sinai, were present at Sinai. And that included all future converts. And I have a little story to share about this. The rabbi with whom I converted way back when, and with whom I worked very closely at Rodef Sholem in different capacities, as a volunteer and then as a cantorial soloist and music director and blah, blah, blah. When he held a meeting, he always used to start the meeting with a joke. So this is the joke that he told to start one of our meetings. So there are two Jews in Israel on a tour bus, or on a bus, just on a city bus. And one of them looks at the other and says, I know you. And they can't figure out where they know each other from. So they play Jewish geography. One is a tourist and one is a Sabra, someone who was born in Israel. Well, did you ever visit New York City? No. Have you ever been to Israel before? No. So they can't figure it out. And all of a sudden, the Israeli turns to the other man and says, I know. You were standing next to me at Sinai, which is part of this verse. All the souls who ever were present at Sinai. And at that moment, I just had this, well, I have to use a Christian word, but revelation. I had this revelation that I had been at Sinai. And it was really funny to find that out as the result of a joke that my rabbi told. But I feel so strongly that I was a Jewish soul. I was born in a Methodist body, but I found out where I was supposed to be. So in the prophets, we have some mention of some famous converts, and among them was Rahab the harlot. And I don't know if you remember this story from the book of Joshua, but the Israelites are trying to, well, actually, in most cases, fighting their way into the promised land that they've been given. And Joshua is not only their leader after Moses, he's also their military leader. And he sends 2 spies to Jericho to kind of scout out what's going on. And Rahab, who was either a prostitute or an innkeeper or both, had an establishment that was actually built right into the walls of Jericho. And she hid the spies. She had already decided that she had heard about what the Israelites' God had done for them in Egypt. And she decided to throw her lot in with them. So she hid them from the soldiers who came to find them. And she said, when you conquer the city, please spare me and my family. And so the spies said, put a yellow thread, hang a yellow thread from your window, and we will spare you. And so Rahab was known as a righteous convert. And tradition has that she actually married Joshua. And from her issued or among her descendants were Jeremiah, Hilkiah, Sariah, Messiah, Baruch, Hanamel, and Shalom. And also possibly the prophetess Huldah was one of her offspring. So famous convert. This is a quote from Isaiah, also in the books of the prophets. And Isaiah lived from 740 to about 700 before the Common Era. As for the foreigners who attach themselves to the Lord, to minister to God, and to love the name of the Lord, to be God's servants, all who keep the Sabbath and do not profane it, all who hold fast to my covenant, I will bring them to my sacred mount and let them rejoice in my house of prayer. Their burnt offering and sacrifices shall be welcome on my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples. So obviously the foreigners are Gerim who attach themselves to the Lord, who become proselytes. Ruth is probably the most famous proselyte. And as I said before, we read her, we read the scroll of Ruth at Shavuot. Shavuot is known, among other things, as when the Torah was given. And what better story to read than another Ger who came to Judaism in such a beautiful way. And there isn't the language in Ruth is just gorgeous. I think you all know the story. Naomi was Ruth's mother-in-law, and the mother-in-law of Ruth and Orpah, who were married to her two sons. Her two sons died, her husband died, and she said to the daughters-in-law, go back to your, father's house, go back to your own people. And this is what Ruth replied. Do not urge me to leave you and to turn back and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus and more may the Lord do to me if anything but death part me from you. And Robert Seltzer, in one of the books in which I did research for this presentation, said, could this be, or asks, can this be an ancient formula rather than an invented speech? And if you think about it, it does kind of sound like a vow or something that could even be, it could be what a convert would say before the time when, in the rabbinic period, which we're going to get to, where there were prescribed things that you did. This was pre that time. And so perhaps this is something that converts said when they wanted to throw their lot in with the Jews. So I'm going to just throw out at you some quick history. You might remember that in 586 before the Common Era, so that's about 2,500 years ago, a great number of the Israelites, not all of them, but a great number, were taken in captivity to Babylon. And then starting with Cyrus the Great, when Cyrus the Great conquered the Babylonians, he allowed the Jews to start coming back to Israel. So that started about 539. Ezra and Nehemiah came back from the Babylonian exile, and the exile at this point has been, let's see, about 45 years and change. And they come back to Jerusalem, which was basically the temple had been destroyed. A lot of the city had been destroyed. And they came back to help rebuild it. And they found out that in the, in this almost 50-year period, a lot of the Jewish men had taken foreign wives. So Ezra actually said, if you want to be considered by Jews, you need to renounce those foreign wives. I don't know if he allowed the wives to convert. But at least in this period, when Judaism was starting to rebuild itself, they came back from Babylonia. They built the second great temple. The leaders were insisting that the men who had married foreign wives to renounce them. A little later, about another, not quite 100 years, is the Book of Esther, the Persian period. And there is this quote at the end, near the end, kind of the chapter that nobody gets to. You kind of always end at the part where the Jews were able to fight back against their attackers, and everything is happy. It wasn't so happy if you read the last couple of chapters, but anyways, Esther chapter 29, verse 27, the Jews undertook and irrevocably obligated themselves and their descendants and all who might join them. So that's talking about convert, to observe these 2 days in the manner prescribed and at the proper time each year. And of course, we're talking about Purim. Many from the Persian Empire declared themselves Jews after Haman fell. So now we're in the kind of the next section. It isn't post-biblical because some of the books are still being written, but this is the Hellenistic period. which was the Greek period, and which started, this is wrong. It's not the death of Alexander the Great. It's the when Alexander conquered Palestine, which is what that part, that's what Israel was known of as at that time. This was the most active era of proselytism in Jewish history, and attested to many Jewish, Greek, and Roman, as attested to by many Jewish, Greek, and Roman sources. Basically, Jewish propaganda looked at the Greek gods. Alexander was really big on introducing Hellenism and Hellenistic culture to all of the lands that he conquered. But the Jews looked at the Greek gods. They all were so human, but kind of worse than human. They all had many foibles. They were promiscuous, and even though there were a lot of things that were beautiful about the Hellenistic culture, the kind of gods that they worshiped were not part of it. It's interesting that Hellenism admired the Jewish religion, but the rabbis, the scholars, the priests of this period didn't return the favor. There were individual missionary activities by Jewish travelers and settlers. The Jewish historian Josephus wrote that both Greek and barbarian cities evinced a great zeal for Judaism. So Philo of Alexander was a Jewish philosopher. He attempted to harmonize Moses and Plato into one philosophical system. He used the Greek term. He was right, even though he was a Jew, he was writing in Alexandria, which was a huge center then, both for the Hellenists, or for the Greeks, the Egyptian Greeks, and the Jews. It was a big Jewish center. And he used the Greek term proselytos, which of course has come to proselyte. So that was someone originally who had left polytheism, which is the Hellenistic belief in all those gods with lots of flaws, and arrived at a new and God-pleasing life. The proselyte, exalted aloft by his happy lot, will be gazed at from all sides, marveled at, and held blessed by all for two things of highest excellence: that he came over to the camp of God, and that he has won a prize best suited to his merits, a place in heaven firmly fixed, greater than words dare describe, while the nobly born native Jew who has falsified the sterling of his high lineage will be dragged right down and carried into Tartarus itself and profound darkness. So in Philo's writing, he is weighing a born Jew who spurns his birthright and a proselyte who takes it seriously, and the proselyte is higher on the scale. So the Hasmonean period, this was after the time of the Maccabees. Just, I know I'm throwing out a lot of history at you, but the story of the Hasmonean dynasty started with Judah Maccabee and his brothers and his father, who led a revolt against the Seleucid emperor Antiochus. Gosh, this is all so complicated. After Alexander the Great died, he died without heir. And so his huge kingdom, which was the largest kingdom ever seen in the world up till that point, was divided into 3 parts and given to his generals. So Antiochus was the one who got the Assyria and the Middle East, the Near East, including Israel. And at a certain point, he wanted to unite his people. And so he started issuing very stringent, cruel rules that the Jews were no longer able to practice their Judaism. And that's when Judah Maccabee and his brothers and his father revolted, led the revolt against it. And so from them came the Hasmonean period. And this is the only time in history that Judaism was forcibly extended to people who had not asked to come under its jurisdiction. So John Hyrcanus, who made himself king and high priest of Judea from 135 to 104 BC, forcefully converted the Idumeans, and that's the red section. And his son forcibly Judaized the Iturians, and that's up here. This, I think it's kind of like pink area. So a few decades later. Something about the Pharisees. Pharisees is really, in my opinion, it's the Christian term. They're talking about the rabbis. The Sadducees were the priestly case, and the Pharisees were the rabbinic case. And there were 2 famous teachers, rabbinic teachers. One was Hillel, and we follow many of Hillel's teachings, and the other was Shammai. He was the other kind of famous rabbi of his era. And these 2 men were teaching around where the Common Era, or before the Common Era switched into the Common Era. So a brash young man came before Shammai, who was a carpenter, and said to him, "Convert me on the condition that you teach me the whole Torah while I stand on 1 foot." And it says Shammai pushed him aside, but basically he chased him away with a 2x4. So then the same fellow comes before Hillel and asks him the same question. And Hillel converted him, saying, That which is despicable to you, do not do to your fellow. This is the whole Torah, and the rest is commentary. Go and learn it. So in one sentence, he is welcoming. You catch more flies with honey than vinegar. He's welcoming, and he also tells the man, Judaism is a lifelong learning pursuit. So the rest is commentary. Go and learn it. It's interesting that the Christian disciple Matthew, and there are 4 gospels in the New Testament: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So this is what Matthew says about proselytization in this era. He ascribes a veritable passion for proselytizing to the Pharisees, again, the rabbis. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisee, hypocrites, for you traverse sea and land to make a single proselyte. And when he becomes a proselyte, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourselves. So this says a couple of things to me. One, that as often happens, quite often proselytes become very, very strong Jews, contributing, what my feeling toward that, my view of that, it's because you've chosen it. You've chosen your religion. It's not something that your parents are foisting on you. You have chosen it of your own accord. And so to Matthew, who is trying to sell Christianity at this point, that's going to make him twice as much a child of hell, because he's a proselyte. And then some famous ancestors, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Akiva, very, very well thought of, well-known rabbis of the 2nd century. So the rabbinic era is basically, when we talk about the rabbinic era, it's after the fall of the temple, the 2nd temple, which was in 70, the Common Era. And as you may know, a kind of conclave, a group of rabbis took refuge in Yavna, which is a coastal town, small coastal town in Israel. And they decided that because Jews were now scattered all over the world, they had been sent in slavery to Rome and all over the Mediterranean, and they had been kicked out of Jerusalem. And even though up until now, the Torah had been written down, but a lot of things were still passed on orally. And the rabbis decided as a group, and it was a very democratic group, they decided, we're going to write these things down now. Otherwise, they're going to be lost to posterity. So they are also the ones who codified or came up with an actual requirements for conversion. One of them for the men is milah, circumcision, tefillah, immersion in pure water. And of course, now we know that as immersion in the mikvah. And offering a temple sacrifice. Obviously, after the temple fell, that didn't happen. but and according to the Mishnah, and the Mishnah is the oral Talmud, or sorry, the oral Torah that was written down by this group of rabbis. And then the Talmud came later, and that was commentary of rabbis, both in Palestine and in Babylonia, on the Mishnah and also on Torah. So the status of according to the Mishnah and the Talmud, status of a convert was the same as a born Jew, with some caveats. They were allowed to marry anyone, even a Kohen, if they converted before age, women, only if converted before age 3 in one day. They had limits to act as a judge. They could act as a judge only for their fellow converts, for other converts. But their children, there were no caveats. They were the same as any born Jew. Of course, Abraham was the first Jew, so anyone that wasn't born into his family was a proselyte that he made. And for that reason, most converts, when they take a Hebrew name, will be like Bat, I would be Bat Avraham Visarah. I would be the daughter of Abraham and Sarah. And just an interesting midrash called the proselyte dearer to God than all the Israelites who stood at the foot of Mount Sinai. After the Bar Kokhba revolt, which was somewhat after the fall of the Second Temple, proselytes reverted to their former ways. And because it became very, very dangerous to become a Jew. So then it became a little harder. You were kind of interrogated when you wanted to become a Jew. You would be addressed as follows. What reason have you for desiring to become a proselyte? Do you not know that Israel at the present time, Israel is persecuted and oppressed, despised, harassed, and overcome by afflictions? If he replies, I know, and yet am unworthy, he is accepted forthwith and is given instruction in some of the minor and some of the major commandments. And this shows a preference among the rabbis for sincere converts with no ulterior motives. And part of tradition was turning someone away 3 times that wanted to become a Jew. When I wanted to become a cantor, I didn't realize that the cantors, the interviewing committee were using that same kind of turning away. So I'm blanking on what I was. I was not encouraged. I was very much not encouraged until the 3rd time that I pursued this. And the rest is history.
Cantor, keep an eye on the clock, okay?
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So some rabbis were in favor of proselytization and some were not. Rabbi Helbo in the 3rd century said, proselytes are injurious to Israel as a scab. What happened was that when Christianity became the state religion in Rome, and that happened when Theodora, the Empress of Rome, adopted Christianity as her religion in 323, it became illegal for Jews to seek converts. So obviously, that was kind of the end of this golden age of seeking converts. And then it became punishable by death in a Christian nation. And then it also it also was a capital offense with the rise of Islam in the 600s. And the only place that conversion was still happening, probably, was in the far reaches of frontiers where they weren't going to go to hold everyone to the letter of the law. This is an example of a conversion in the 8th century of the Khazars, and they were a pagan Turkish people. And if you notice, I love this picture. Here he is, a fierce warrior, and look at his payas. Just briefly, there were during the Middle Ages and medieval times, there were a lot of priests and nobles who converted. This is what Maimonides, who's our famous philosopher and Jewish scholar, Sephardic scholar, said to Obadiah the proselyte. Whoever adopts Judaism and confesses the unity of the divine name as it is prescribed in the Torah is counted among the disciples of Abraham our father. Do not consider your origin as inferior. While we are the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you derive from him through whose word the world was created. And there's always somebody on the other side. The statement, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. So Judah Halevi, the Spanish poet, also a Sephardic poet and philosopher, those who become Jews do not take equal rank with born Israelites who are specially privileged to attain to prophecy, while the former can only achieve something by learning from them and can only become pious and learned, but never prophets. And I'm just gonna keep going. The conversos, which were the Spanish and Portuguese Jews who had to go into, basically, that they had to adopt Catholicism in order to learn, but they were secret Jews. So they weren't really converts, but after several generations, they might have been regarded as, the same as converts, and it was dependent on the community in which they found themselves, whether they were returning Jews or if they had to do a formal conversion to Judaism. And I think we're getting close. So this is Moses Mendelssohn, who was a famous philosopher of the Enlightenment, and the grandfather, I think, of Mendelssohn, the composer. According to the principles of my faith, I must not seek to convert anyone not born a Jew. The zeal for making proselytes runs diametrically counter to the spirit of Judaism, assertions to the contrary by certain people notwithstanding. Our rabbis are not only far from feeling any compulsion to proselytize, but make a point of enjoining us to dissuade with the most serious arguments anyone asking to be converted. We are to tell any would-be convert how unnecessarily heavy a burden this decision would put on him. It should be evident then that my father's faith does not ask to be propagated. And even though I have some more slides, I think we could end it with that, because I would say Moses Mendelssohn's feelings on converts was the one that kind of carried into the 20th century, in that we weren't going out and seeking proselytes, and people still might be dissuaded a few times from seeking to convert. It's my own observations that this is relaxed a lot in the past maybe 20 or 30 years. I don't know. I would welcome what other people think, what their views on the current feelings about converts. I know I was welcomed. A little later, if you want, I will share my own conversion story, which is kind of funny. But let me turn it over to you to see if you have any questions.
You want to stop sharing?
Yep.
Good.
No, I didn't see. Was there anything in the chat?
No, but if anybody has any comments or questions, just feel free to unmute yourself.
Well, I'm really very impressed, Michal. It was such a deep and well thought out presentation. Wow. You really, history was not my my forte, let's say, to say the least. And I'm always in awe of people who for whom it is. So I thank you very much.
Welcome. It was a lot to throw at you.
But that's good.
This is Emily talking. It's been my experience with converts that they are often more Jewish than I am in terms of practice and following tradition. For me, Judaism is a lot more spiritual than it is. I hate to say religious, but I mean, I just feel it's a more spiritual religion than Christianity. And I've spent some time in churches in the past couple of years, and I still feel that way. I still feel like after learning what I learned in the churches, we're more spiritual in nature than Christianity, at least where I was. And it kind of fits in more with the whole being, you know, the person, and addressing the whole person, not just the physical part of the person, but the mental, the emotional. For me, I mean, that's how I feel.
I'm not sure if anybody can hear me or not. I've been trying to put on my audio here. My name is Shelby Oppenheim. I converted to Judaism last year. I married into a conservative Jewish family. But prior to actually meeting my husband, I had attempted to convert. And because I took a world religions course in college a long time ago, I won't say how long because I'm old, but Judaism always spoke to me. And when I attempted to convert, I met with a rabbi. And at the time, I was unaware that they're supposed to turn you away. So I had met with him and I felt really discouraged leaving our meeting. And I thought, well, boy, maybe they don't want me to convert. But I still kept at it. And then ironically, I met my now husband, and as our Cantor likes to say, I'm a very persistent person. And so I guess my persistence got me in. But I think for one, I'm just so unbelievably proud to be Jewish. The coursework to become Jewish is very strenuous. Learning Hebrew on top of all of the blessings and just living the lifestyle is not only hard, but it's rewarding. So as a convert, I have so much pride, and I'm proud to be raising a Jewish family, and I'm so excited to meet other Jewish people. So this is nice. My mother-in-law and father-in-law invited me into this. So thank you guys for allowing me to join this meeting.
We're so glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Of course. I'm glad to share it. I have met other converts through J-Hub. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with J-Hub, but it's an interfaith online group where a lot of converts join it to meet other Jewish families. And we're also part of a Jewish group here in Ohio. And it's so nice being able to meet people who have taken the courses that I have. It's nice to meet people who are just as faithful to the practice as we are. So it's just been such an honor. So yeah, that's our story, and and I'm proud to share it.
Thank you.
Well, Shelby, I am a Jew by choice as well. I converted 9 years ago on the eve of my son's bar mitzvah. And so I have been married since 1995. I won't try and do the math, but since 1995. At that time, there was one rabbi in sort of all of Ohio, Western New York, Pennsylvania, who did interfaith marriages. And you got married on the day that rabbi told you what was your appointed time. He basically did 2 weddings a day, Saturday and Sunday, all year long, because he was the only one. And then I started, going to temple with my husband, and I am sort of intrinsically a religious person. I was an elder in the Presbyterian Church, but as I learned more about Judaism, it just made more sense to me. And then I was raising Jewish children. We had decided to do that, and I was teaching them Sunday school and learning Hebrew, and out here in the sticks in Bradford. And then I showed up in temple on Yom Kippur morning, and it was just me and the rabbi, maybe one. No, there were a few other people, but like I had taken off work, and my children and husband weren't there and everything. And it was funny. I was sort of sitting there thinking, I think I'm Jewish.
It just makes sense. It's a calling.
right. Here I am, me and, two retired people in temple on Yom Kippur morning, and everyone else is at work. And so I waited for her afterwards and said, I think I'm Jewish. And she said, I was thinking the same thing. So in terms of classes and that kind of thing, I did not have to go through all of that. She said, I'm not going to make you write a paper, well, I did have to write a paper and go before the Beit Din. And it was interesting. There was this moment that really surprised me in the conversion when I emerged from the mikveh. And she's like, now I have to kind of give you the talk. That's basically, so I was interested when Michal was talking about this part. That's like now everyone hates the Jews talk, and do you still want to be a Jew? And, it was just funny because, I don't know, in 2013, that seemed irrelevant or like history, but not so much. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Doris, you want to say?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I converted over 50 years ago, little over 50 years ago. And I have to say, I was not turned away. I was very welcomed. And I quickly became very active in the congregation and continued to do so. And I must say, Shelby, I have not had the pleasure to meet you yet, but I know your family so well because they're from Erie like we are.
Yes.
And I very much look forward to you whenever you and are in town to join us at any of our services. I would love to meet you.
I would love to meet
and
you
welcome.
as well. Thank you so much. Thank you. Everybody has been just so wonderful. This is so great to be a part of.
You made a good decision.
I did, like I said, I just, before I even was actually Jewish, I had always felt Jewish, from the way that I lived my life, my principles, morals, values, everything. So everything kind of aligned for me, and it just made perfect sense. So I think to myself, I've always been Jewish. Just the title became official last year, and I'm so happy for that.
And I'm anxious to meet your beautiful little Amelia too.
Thank you. She is beautiful. she's our little Goldilocks Jewish sweetie. So I can't wait for everybody to meet her as well. And our son Colton, who actually we just had Havdalah, and he read some of the blessings, and it was just one of my proudest moments last weekend for him to finally be able to do that. Between Sunday school and Wednesday school and all of that, he's on his way too. So
Cantor, do you want to share your story? Cantor?
I did not convert for marriage. We agreed to raise our children Jewish. And so I figured in order to do that, I needed to do some, learning myself. And the more that I learned, the more I loved it. So I started taking an introduction to Judaism, and I liked it so much. I took it 2 full years, the same course, 2 full years, and I started the 3rd year, and then I had children, and but I still didn't feel ready to convert. but I was very, very active at my synagogue. Both my husband and I were. And somehow after the birth of my second child, my first son, I was ready. I was just ready. And I called up the rabbi, the same one who told the joke about, the 2 Jews in Israel, and said, what would you say if I said I wanted to convert? And he said, oh, Michelle, you've been living as a Jew for so many years. And I said, well, what if I told you I wanted to convert soon? And he said, see you Friday at 4 o'clock. So
yeah, that's kind of how mine was. I mean, we had some formality with the mikveh, and I had to write an essay for the Beit Din, but she's like, yeah, duh.
I didn't do the.
My hesitancy really had nothing to do with Judaism so much as my own parents. I guess I was worried. It was very hard for me to tell my own parents that I was going to convert. And even though I hadn't gone to church in years and I hadn't been a part of the church, but it just seemed like that final formal step.
Well, Mazel Tov on your conversion.
Doris.
I just wanted to share one more, I think, interesting little thing. I did not go to a mikveh. I went to one of our beaches on Lake Erie, and that's how it happened.
That counts.
I love it.
Although I don't know if you were naked, so.
Well, I had to take my suit off and hand it to my mother-in-law.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, because you have to go down 3 times. So
that's what I was wondering. I guess you just did it once you were already in the water.
Yes, covered with
Larry?
water.
Okay. Just curious about the logistics.
I had my conversion during COVID, so we actually had to find a swimming pool because the mikvah was closed. So that was pretty interesting. We did it in my family's in-ground swimming pool, and at the same time, the lawn keepers came. So part of the clergy was like raising their hands in the front yard saying, don't come back there. So that was fun.
And I bet that might be the first time the lawn keepers had ever run into that.
Right. It's a good take-home story.
Go ahead,
Any
Larry.
questions or, sorry, Noah.
No, I was just going to turn it over to Larry.
Cantor, Michal, thank you. It was inspiring, it was real, it was thought-provoking, and it was thrilling to hear your story and to hear the history of conversions and the history of that whole process. And I want to thank those people who just made their comments here in the last 4 or 5 minutes about their own personal experiences. It meant a lot to us. And it also, I think I'm very impressed with this group here for another reason. This meeting started at 7 o'clock and you all missed Jeopardy. So thanks for coming. This concludes the program, of course. We want to thank Cantor, Michal, and all of you who attended. The Western Pennsylvania Small Congregations Committee will soon be meeting to plan next year's programs. And if you have any questions, any requests, please let us know. And we want to wish you a happy holiday. And thank you for coming. And God bless you all. Thank you.